organizations and businesses and individuals in our city and throughout the country. In the first edition of BFR 365, there's a page about every single organization, business, and person that we'll be working with. So you all, when you take the magazine home tonight and you read through it, know that these are some wonderful organizations that we will be partnering with. One of them, Myra Walker, is here tonight. I'm wearing a dress that she designed for me. Myra, please stand. She's going to have the first ever Black Fashion Week in the city of Cincinnati, and we're going to gather around her to make sure that happens. That's what the Black Family Reunion is and does. Go to our website at myblackfamilyreunion.org, and you'll see all the information. Our college tour started at Miami University this morning with one of our sponsors. Tomorrow they'll be at Wilberforce in Central State. And what a beautiful time. I got a chance to meet them at their second college, Good Samaritan College of Nursing. And then they went on to the University of Cincinnati, and they closed at Cincinnati State. So tomorrow is their HBCU day. Y'all, let's give it up for the college tour. Under the direction of Kim Huckleby, Roland Martin, very, very excited that he's here tonight. Every year, I say, Lord, who can come in and stir us up? Who can come in and get us in some good trouble? And this year, we have Roland Martin, and very excited about it. Before I introduce the next person on the program, I want to share with you all that I have an amazing team that helps to put on BFR every year. The chairperson for BFR Speaks is Miss Pia Hedden. She's there in the back. Her and her committee did a wonderful job. And I'd like all of my team to stand that are here in the building that helped me put on BFR Speaks. I see people waving: Shonda Ewing, Craig Farley, Phil Shakespeare, Bobby Artist, Sharon Lewis. Do I see you there in the back? Thanks to everybody who's a part of the team. We actually start planning as soon as the event is over. Jerome Jackson, Yvonne Smith, I see so many of them here tonight. I'm just again excited and asking everyone to stay with us. Tomorrow we have our breakfast at the Word Deliverance Church in Forest Park. And then we have our BFR Lounge in honor of Curtis Fuller at the First Financial Center downtown. We also have our parade at Avondale Town Center on Saturday, and we're at Sawyer Point from noon to 8. Our job fair was beautiful today at Music Hall. 6 events in 4 days. So thank you all for your support. Remember to spread the word. Tell everybody about BFR. Last year, we tracked people from 22 different states that came in for BFR. So spread the word and tell your family and friends to come out and support. Tonight, I wanted to make sure that the room was filled with royalty. So I invited some of my friends to make sure that they were a part of tonight. I call her my sister friend, but she's also known to many as the mother of freedom. Her name is Iris Roley. She's a partner of Roadshow Awards and Graphics, the only African-American laser engraving business in Cincinnati, Ohio. She owns it with her husband, Jesse Roley. She currently serves as consultant to the city manager of Cincinnati on policing and public safety. She does a lot for her community all the time. Iris has been inducted into the Ohio Civil Rights Hall of Fame in 2022, the Business Hall of Fame in 2020. She was the NAACP Wright Overstreet Award winner, Community Builder Award. She received the Nefertiti Award, the MLK Award, and many others. At this time, I would like to introduce Iris Roley.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, y'all. I don't know about y'all, but I'm so proud to be black today. I'm busting out of my seams because there are only so many days folks allow you to be black. And it's obvious that Cincinnati can't handle my blackness, but y'all can, right? So before I introduce the dignitary that's in our house, as I was leaving, one of my neighbors who's never spoken to me in 7 years said, "Where you going?" I said, "There's black dignitaries in the city of Cincinnati." I was born and raised to go home and take a bath and change your clothes and get ready. So y'all ready? So I need to ask something of my family, my black family, as we get ready to become dedicated and determined and sustaining that for our children. I need to ask you this with as much black love as I've given you the past 60 years of my life. We will not be recording Mr. Martin. What we will be doing is recording in our minds and taking notes. So I purposefully went home and gathered pens, pencils, and papers from all of my notebooks that I take notes in about black life and what I'm going to do to make it better, to pass out to you all if you needed it. And I want my pens back, because we have many more conversations to have before we get to November, before we get to the rest of the school year, before we get to our health, before we get to a lot. So while I'm saying all this, you should be not recording, but you should be getting your paper and your pencils to take notes. Science has dictated to us that you retain more when you write it down. They already don't want you to have a book, so start your own tonight. Can we do that, family, black family? Y'all ready to be dedicated and determined? Y'all got your paper, your pencils, you ready? You turned off your phones, you rest your hand and put it down. You got something to write with? For you lefties, y'all got your pen? You need a pen? This mama needs something to write with, somebody. Joy, she needs something to write with. We got markers, we got colored pencils, we got pencils, we got pens. Don't forget, I want my stuff back. Kings and queens, princes and princesses, it is my honor to introduce to you tonight Roland Sebastian Martin. Over the course of a journalistic career that has seen him interview multiple U.S. presidents to the top athletes and entertainers in Hollywood, Roland S. Martin is a journalist who has always maintained a clear sense of his calling in this world. Many have bestowed upon him the voice of black America. And that is simply because he's dedicated and determined. Do y'all get that when y'all hear? Mr. Martin is the author of 4 books. His latest is White Fear. His latest is White Fear. The Browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. His other books are Listening to the Spirit Within, 50 Perspectives on Faith, Speak Brother, A Black Man's View of America, and the first President President Barack Obama's road to the White House, as an originally reported by Roland S. Martin. Forgive me if I botched that with my public school education, Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin is a sought-after international speaker, delivering speeches and lectures to numerous groups annually, electrifying audiences with his deep understanding of history, politics, and culture. He has been named 4 times by Ebony Magazine as one of the 150 most influential African Americans in the United States. Y'all can clap for that. In October 2022, Mr. Martin was named a Fellow of the Society of Professional Journalists, the organization's highest honor. In December 2021, he was inducted as the youngest living member of the National Association of Black Journalists Hall of Fame. Y'all can clap for that. In 2008, he was also inducted into the Texas A&M University Journalism Hall of Honor. There is so much to say about Mr. Martin, but Tracy said keep it short, that I'm going to, as Mr. Martin said to me, go online and Google his bio so that your mind is prickled with interest. Mr. Martin is a life member of the National Association of Black Journalists. I don't know if you want to talk about that interview, but I was screaming at my screen. I was with you, so I doubled back to you to hear what you had to say, Mr. Martin. He's a life member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Where y'all at? and a member and a member of Signified Fraternity Incorporated. Mr. Martin is one of my heroes. He doesn't know this. I was stalking him on the streets last year when I saw him walking around like, really, is that Roland Martin? Really? And I was trying to tell him all about the police reform, all the things that we were doing here in the city of Cincinnati. That was me, Mr. Martin. But I honor him with such reverence from our ancestors and the universe, and from the black family in Cincinnati, simply because he is dedicated and determined. Mr. Roland Sebastian Martin.
Brothers and sisters, I want to welcome you back to life. Back to the one that can make your next chapter your best chapter.
All right.
Hallelujah.
How can it be?
So how we doing? All right. Glad to see everybody here. Glad to be back in Cincinnati. I've been here a few times, and it's always a pleasure to be here. Let me first thank everyone for inviting me. Tracy, we appreciate the work continuing of Dr. Dorothy Irene Height. A lot of people may not remember, because as a student of history I understand this, is that when the big six civil rights leaders would often go to the White House to meet with President Kennedy, meet with President Lyndon Baines Johnson, you rarely ever saw Dr. Height in any of the photos, because they would have it arranged where the men would be sitting next to the president and she would be out of frame. And the late Roger Wilkins, who was one of the aides for President Johnson, one day he came in, he saw that, and he actually moved the chairs and actually placed her next to President Johnson. And so that was the only reason you realized she was in any of those meetings. And so we have to understand that even within our culture, we have had to confront and deal with paternalism. We've had to confront and deal with men assuming that only they can be in a leadership role. That's just a fact. And so if anybody wants to deny that, well, that's the case. I mean, so you had that during the Black Freedom Movement. You had that even among the Black Panthers. And then you had that even present day. And it was interesting because when we did the Win with Black Men call a couple of weeks ago, we had the Win with Black Women call. They met on that Sunday. We had our call on Monday. And sisters have been meeting for the last 4 years. They started meeting in 2020. And there were several times when brothers would hit me and they would say, man, we need to be doing something. And I said, okay, well, then go do it. And it never would happen. And so another time a brother called me, he says, man, I'm not understanding why this thing just cannot happen. And I said, well, if you really want to be honest, I said, because you obviously asked me and I'm going to give you an honest perspective. I said, the problem is that typically when you have had any organizing or mobilizing in our community, it was actually done by sisters. Now I know you got some brothers like, oh man, see, here you go, always talking about the sisters, but it's just a fact. And I said, so part of the problem is because this is a call for men, sisters ain't organizing, that's why probably call ain't happened. And so luckily, brothers, we came together and we did that, and that Monday, we had 55,000 brothers who had signed up for that call, and we've had subsequent calls since then. And I'm saying that because everybody in here needs to understand. I mean, Tracy mentioned her support staff and who helped her. First of all, if you are part of this planning and organizing committee, stand up. If you're part of the group that you work on this and this is what you do, Tracy, you're supposed to stand up too. Okay, if y'all, who else? I said stand up. I mean, I wouldn't stutter. All right. So the reason I'm saying that is because I need everybody here to understand these events don't happen unless somebody does the work. And I ain't say sit down. And so And so I think oftentimes we attend events, we show up at stuff, not realizing that these things do not happen unless somebody is meeting, unless they're raising money, unless they're making phone calls, unless they're sending out emails, unless they're making more calls, unless they're trying to get folk out. And so when she mentioned her support staff, I felt that was too tepid of applause in this room, because one person can't do it all. And so we've got to be more responsive of the folk who do the work. So now I want you to properly salute them for their work. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That is important, because I think too often, even when we look at how we got here, we overlook the folk who did the work. We actually overlook folk who actually made these things happen. Let me also say this here. So when she said, y'all got to take notes and we're not recording this, well, I am. I ain't got to ask nobody. So I did my show the first hour from the back, and it's always funny too, because when I go places, they like, you set stuff up by yourself? I'm like, yeah. Why do I need to bring somebody with me when I can do this in 15 minutes? And I always ask the question. I always say, hey, is this being recorded, being streamed? They said no. I'm like, don't worry about it. I got it. So we are live streaming this. If you go to my Black Star Network app, you go to my YouTube channel. And the reason that's important, because I didn't have to ask anybody to do it, because I own it. And that's an example of what we do with the Black Star Network, what Tracy and her crew's doing with the Black Family Reunion, because for this to be the last remaining piece what Dr. Height created is important. It's important because, again, we have these things that have been created and built, and unfortunately what we are witnessing today is a generation that is literally allowing these things to die, to pass away, to go into the dustbins of history. And I'm not just talking about these types of events. I'm even talking about some of our own personal family reunions. A lot of us grew up with little resources, but we had family. My grandparents lived 8 blocks from us, and we lived 8 blocks from them. And the Catholic church that I grew up in, it was founded in their living room. And so every Sunday, my grandfather died when I was 15 years old. Every Sunday for 15 years, that's literally where we were every single weekend, every single Sunday after church. I had my maternal grandparents had 8 children. They had 39 kids. We had 70 plus grandkids. We had 120 plus great grandkids. And I was telling someone that I grew up and I never ever spent the night at a non-family member's house. I said, because one, I had cousins. There wasn't no room for friends. And so we would often get together and we would always be together and always fellowshipping and we were always, eating and singing and praying and arguing and fighting and playing sports and all those different things. And so that was literally my life growing up. And in the past 3 years, my mom has seen 3 of her siblings pass away, and I've had to speak at the funeral, and I've said to my family, I said, I don't understand how we grew up with that type of family, and yet now the only time we actually congregate is when somebody dies. And so what we have to recognize is a lot of us have allowed a lot of death to exist in our community, meaning organizations, meaning events, meaning movements that have actually happened, meaning black businesses that have happened as well. And so as a result, here we are constantly having to restart and do something over when literally all we had to do is use our time and our talents to actually contribute to something to keep these things going. Because see, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture said, you can't show me anybody, you can't show me any African American who has ever achieved anything of notable in our community that did not come through an organization. And so what has happened is, today we have a generation of folk who literally believe in this loner mentality, who believe in operating in silos without realizing the only reason we're sitting here today is because we have had a group of folk, ancestors, who understood the power of the collective. A lot of times we always talk about, man, if we could just do this, if we could do that, and folks start saying this. The same thing when I was talking about that call. Man, if we could just do this and do that. I'm like, do you understand? The Win with Black Women call did not start with 20,000. It didn't start with 2,000. It started with one person who said, man, listen, we need to get together every week, and we need to do all we can to make sure that Biden picks Senator Kamala Harris as his vice president. That's how it actually started. That's actually how it started in 2020. Their goal was simple. We need to meet, organize, mobilize to put that pressure to get him to pick her as his nominee. And that happened. And then after that happened, they then said, now we got to meet to make sure they get elected. And then that happened. And then they said, well, now what we going to do? We're going to do other stuff. Then why am I walking through that? Because it started with a simple idea of one person, my homegirl, Joteka Edie, who then called a couple of friends, and that thing began to build, then it began to build, and it got to the point where they have met every Sunday for the last 4 years. Now, everybody can't make one calls, but the reality is they may have 600 or 700 or 800 or 1,000, 2,000. It may drop, it may increase, depending upon what folks are doing, but they actually meet every single Sunday. And so when we had the Win with Black Men call, I asked the brother, I asked my man Khalil, I said, Khalil, how often do y'all meet? He said, we meet once a month. I said, y'all not meeting once a month anymore. I said, you don't have 55,000 folks who get on and you meet once a month. I said, y'all gonna meet at least every 2 weeks, or it needs to be every week. Because see, that requires commitment. So here was one small little idea of the mission was to get her on that ticket. That was in 2020, and here we are 4 years later, and that same group then met to say, now we got to make her president. And so then when they met, Win with Black Men was on Monday, South Asian women met on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, white women met, no, Latinas met on Tuesday, South Asian women met on Wednesday, white women met on Thursday, black gay dudes met on Friday, Caribbean folks met, HBCU folks met, then you had white dudes for Harris, then you had Irish for Harris, I posted some, you now got Jews for Harris, then I saw, it was another post, every time it happens, I post one. So all of a sudden, all these other folk begin to realize that we don't have to ask permission to do any of this. We can actually do it ourselves. So with that in mind, normally I tag my text. Now, you don't know what tag the text mean. You clearly no longer go to a black church. So the person next to you looking, I don't know what a tag your text is. Just pray for them and say, I need to walk you down the aisle one Sunday. So if you don't remember anything I say, I'm going to go ahead and give you the title of this, which is, and I'm going to play off of what they sang, no one can stop us but us. So when I was just talking about how those sisters meeting and the decision in 2020 led to her being picked, led to them being elected. 4 years later, led to them mobilizing, organizing for her to get the nomination. That didn't happen. And now moving to fight for Vice President Kamala Harris to be elected president, the first woman president, first African-American president. That only happens when folk decide to stop tweeting, talking, phoning, complaining, and doing. I spend lots of time, and unnecessarily a large amount of time, having to listen to people complain. People think I'm being short with them when I cut them off when they're giving me a long spiel. I guarantee you, when you roll up on me last year, she was going. I was like, stop. Send me an email. Other folk who want to do something, trying to get on my show, business, I say, send me a one-pager. Now, folk like, man, he cut me off. Yes, because you were going too long. 2, I can read fast. But 3, 99% of the people who you tell to send you the email never do. I don't carry business cards. Why am I going to carry some business card to give you that you're never going to use? That's one, a waste of my money and a waste of my pocket space. I have a QR code. If you want it, here you go. And I got actually 3 QR codes. One QR code got my cell phone number in it. One QR code don't. Depending on who you are, you're going to get one of them 2 QR codes. Then I got the backup QR code that don't have my cell phone number. I'm saying that because you cannot say you care about something. You cannot say that you want something to be changed. You cannot say that you would love for us to do this and do this and do this if you are unwilling to actually put some skin in the game to make it happen. That is the one thing that drives me crazy when I listen to people, and really what they want to do is they want you to be they want you to listen to them complain about something, and then when you hit them, so what you gonna do? Then all of a sudden, I swear, in that 5-second exchange, you are now speaking a foreign language that they no longer can understand by asking the simple question, what you gonna do? When Obama was elected, every time I flew somewhere, people were like, man, I want to do something, I don't know. And they say, I just want to do something. Then I would go, what are the 3 things you care about? And then I would ask them what those were. Then I would then begin to ask them additional questions. I said, well, you start with one of those. And they would just look at me like I'm crazy because, and then, I'm like, no, hold up. I just told you, do one. Like, for instance, I don't understand. Here's why I could never run for office. They were trying to get me to run for office since I was 20 years old. I'm like, no, I know what my gifting is. But here's also why I could never run for office. Because I probably, depending upon the election, I might start with likely about 20,000 votes, but I'm probably going to end up with about 4. Because I don't tolerate complaining people. I couldn't I couldn't be an elected official and have folk talk about complaining about the education system, and then I go, you're a parent? Yeah. Your kids in school? Yes. You in the PTA? No. I know we in church, but get the hell out of my face. Reverend William Barber said hell is one of the cuss words in the Bible that can be used. So my frat brother gave me permission on that one. But I'm serious. I literally can't listen to somebody complain about education and their children if they are unwilling to even join a PTA. Because what that tells me is you really don't care about the education of your child if you are unwilling to join something that directly impacts your children. I can't listen to people who are HBCU graduates and complain about the state of their school, and they don't give. I can't listen to somebody who shows me photos and videos and social media posts of them going to homecoming where you likely stayed at a hotel not owned by black people, where you likely ate at restaurants not owned by black people, where you likely flew on a airline not owned by black people, but then you likely rented a car from a car company not owned by black people, but you are unwilling to leave a $5 check for your school. Because when you look at the giving rates of many of these schools, literally they are 2 to 4% of alumni. Not 2 to 4% giving 1,000, 2 to 4% period. And then I can't. It's hard for me to again listen to people who complain about the condition of our communities, who complain about, well, our parks and our roads and things along those lines, and then you begin to say, well, do you vote? No, that don't make no difference. And I'm like, well, you part of the problem. I mean, listen, last week, 2 weeks ago, we were in Chicago for our National Association of Black Journalists Convention, and all these folks were complaining about the decision to invite Donald Trump, and I was sitting across from one person who was angry, who was upset, and there was a business meeting on that Saturday, and she was like, Roland, why were you not at the business meeting? I was like, first of all, I was playing golf. No, and I said, 2, this was your first business meeting. I'm a 35-year member. I'm a life member. I said, I've been on the board 3 times. I said, I was a national student representative. I was a secretary. I was the vice president for digital. I said, so I actually ran. This person then said, you know, I got to admit, I'm part of the problem because I can't remember the last NABJ election I voted. I said, that's my point. You're complaining about leadership that you never voted for. I said, so don't question why I said, I'm going to tell you why I was not at the business meeting, because I knew the lies that were going to be told. I knew how folk were going to dismiss, and I knew how I was going to react. So it was better I not be at that meeting, because I'm letting you know there would have been a problem if I was at that meeting. But it was a perfect example of someone having to admit, here I am complaining about leadership not leading, and that person had never voted for leadership. And that right there alone spoke to what happens for so many of us, where we are literally complaining and mad and upset about the condition of our communities and what is going on. And then we're not asking ourselves, what role am I playing? 1, am I voting? And then 2, when the election is over, am I still involved in the process? Because am I going to the city council meeting, the school district meeting, the county commissioners meeting? Am I going to the state capitol? Am I going to Congress? And I know somebody's saying, man, listen, I ain't got time for all of that. I got job, I got kids, I got bills, and I understand all of that. But I got a mama and a daddy. Daddy's 77, mama's 77 in November, never went to college, had 5 kids, grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, never made more than $50,000 combined. And when they got together with folks, they said, we want to start our Clinton Park Civic Club because we want the condition of our community to change. All the folk who were meeting, except 1, had a college degree, but they cared enough about their community to say, we got to do something. And so they started with, let's have a trash pickup, and then that went to, let's cut down these, let's get rid of these empty houses, these overgrown lots. And then it was like, we need stepped up police control. And so who's the police commander? And then it was, you know what, we need some new streets and street lights and this new sewer system. And let's get the park refurbished. Let's get that old firehouse turned to a senior citizen center. And in 10 years, a community was transformed because you had a group of people, regular, ordinary people, who had jobs, who had kids, who had bills, who didn't have college degrees, but saw a neighborhood transform because they actually cared enough to do something about it. And so that spirit has to continue, because if it doesn't continue, then you actually go backwards. And so for a lot of us, Today, we're so scared to challenge somebody else and ask them the question, what you gonna do? If we really honest, when we do get together with our families, y'all know this, some of y'all are hoping and praying one of your nieces and nephews don't say the prayer. Because you know they can't read. And you know they can't communicate. And you will sit there and have dinner, not check your sister or your brother or cousin, knowing full well that child is falling behind, because you don't want no static, you don't want no drama, or you don't want furniture moving. You just want to come to Big Mama house, or your mama and your daddy or your grandparents, have dinner and go back to your house. I don't really want to say nothing. But let me be real clear with you. You are going to hear something 5, 10, 15 years later, because your unwillingness to challenge that issue right there when that child is 3 and 4 or 5 will come back when they're 15, 16, and 18. And then now what you've done is you have allowed something to get to the point that when they now are 20 and 25, they now are an economic burden on your children, on your other nieces and nephews. And so now we have a generational curse continuing where somebody black now is making 35, 40, 45,000. Now you got to help somebody pay their rent, pay their phone bill, pay to go to school, pay for this. So one of the reasons many of us cannot actually build generational wealth because we were having to financially take care of all these other folks who are around us, because too many of us didn't want to say nothing then, but you got to pay up today. So when I say can't nobody stop us but us, we literally have to have what I've been saying is a reprogramming in Black America. My man John Hope Bryan, who is the CEO, founder of Operation Hope, he says Black America needs to reboot. I said, no, we need to reprogram. A reprogramming means that you begin to completely rethink and change how you see the world and how you make certain decisions. Now, I know what racist white folk gonna do. I know systemic racism. I know all of those things. But see, for me is, what can I control? What can I impact? And how can I be a difference maker to my people? So when you begin to think that way, worldview begins to change. When we built our studio, it was interesting because you always hear, we can't find this, we can't find that, we can't find this. So when my control room was built, it was built by a black engineering company out of Atlanta. That was $250,000. When the lights in my studio were installed, that was a black lighting company. That's about $175,000. When our set was built, that was built by a black set design company. That was about $8,000. When the green screen needed to be built, well, we got that from a black drape company. It was like $2,000. So nearly everything in my studio was actually built, installed by black-owned businesses. That only happened because I made a conscientious decision to seek out folk who normally are overlooked to do the work where we are. And in fact, if there was somebody who, if they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, then I'm going to pick up the phone and then call somebody else who looked like me. Now, why is that important? Well, if you go back to April 3rd, 1968, when Dr. King gave his last sermon in Mason Temple, in that particular sermon, he says black people individually are poor, yet collectively represent one of the largest economies in the world. he says in that speech, black people need to be moving as a collective in order to make fundamental changes to our community. And so what he's saying there is you can't just be operating as a lone wolf. How do you move as a collective? So for me, if I have black folks who are supporting me, who are investing in me, investing in my show, then I turn around and I'm actually using it for black businesses. That's now driving their business, that's now supporting their families, and it's building them. When we had our TV One show, and when it ended, a sister who was a makeup artist, she thanked me, and she was in tears, and she said, I got to thank you for bringing me on, because she said, by doing the makeup on your show for the last 2.5 years, this is how I was able to buy my first house. See, most of y'all not clapping because, see, here's what y'all don't understand. In the television business, when you go into these networks, you rarely see black makeup artists. Okay, some of y'all still not getting it. I spent 6 years at CNN. It was few black makeup artists. When I go to MSNBC, I'm not running into lots of black makeup artists. When I was do CBS or NBC, I'm not seeing lots of black makeup artists. My deal was, if we gonna have a black show on a black network and we need somebody black who knows how to make up black people, because you gotta know our skin tone ain't the same, because Orange Man is orange and we not, then that's what you have to do. So as a result, this sister gets hired, but see, I ain't done with that. Not only does she make money for us, because of the type of guests that were coming through our show, they were hiring her to do their makeup from other jobs. See, y'all still don't quite understand. See, I'm really about to mess y'all up, because as a result of that sister getting hired on my show and that sister doing our makeup, that sister was recommended, and she was the one who did the makeup for Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson when she got the nomination. So when she was in Vogue, that sister was the one who did the makeup. And so that sister, had she not done that, would have never had the opportunity to go bigger and be in Vogue magazine, all because of a simple decision by saying, we gonna hire a black makeup artist. That's why I'm trying to get y'all to understand, can't nobody stop us but us. So the decisions that we are making every day in our lives, the decisions that we are making when it comes to our communities, is having a direct positive or negative benefit. So if somebody gonna be doing something over here, I know what they're doing, but I need our stuff to be right. I need our folk to begin to understand that if we're going to talk about actually building black-owned businesses, realizing that pre-COVID, if you look in those numbers, we had 2.9 million black-owned businesses, and all of a sudden, guess what? 2.8 of them had one employee. The reason 41% of black-owned businesses went out of business during COVID, because they were not real businesses. They were one employee. Self-proprietors. 95% of all black-owned businesses do less than $5 million in revenue or less. 95%. So only 5% of all black-owned businesses do revenue exceeding $5 million. Just so you understand how crazy this is, on September 4th will be our 6th anniversary of Roland Martin Unfiltered. On September 4th will be the 3rd anniversary of the Black Star Network. The day I launched, with 7 employees, put us in the top 1 percentile of all black-owned businesses. The day we launched. The day we launched. So I'm unpacking that because we have to understand scale. We're talking about black economics, but part of the problem is scale. Now let me connect with voting. So you now have to be asking the question, how what's the percentage of contracts we get from the city of Cincinnati? Then you got to be asking, what's the percentage of contracts we get from Hamilton County? And then what's the percentage of contracts are we getting from the state of Ohio? I'm saying all of that because in 1972, black folks were getting 0.0012% of all city contracts in Atlanta. 0.0012. Not 1%, not a 0.5%, not 0.25%, 0.0012. Maynard Jackson came in and said, no, we're about to change this thing. And then when they were rebuilding the airport, the Atlanta airport, I call it Jackson Hartsfield, they call it Hartsfield Jackson. That is the biggest economic engine in Georgia. It is arguably the biggest economic engine in the South. He said tumbleweeds will be rolling down those runways before I let this be rebuilt, and there's not significant black participation. So you cannot call Atlanta the Mecca today without understanding that it was Maynard Jackson, followed by Andrew Young, followed by Maynard Jackson, followed by a succession of black mayors who understood black economics. Maynard's grandfather taught him the 3 B's, the ballot, the book, and the buck. He combined the ballot and the buck together by using the power of political force to change the economics of not only black Atlanta, but the black South. And so what we have to understand is when we vote for political leaders, those individuals are using taxpayer dollars, which is our money. And so I love all these black folks who yell, do for self, do for self. Elon Musk ain't the richest man in the world because he's a smart white man from South Africa. No, he got massive tax incentives, billions of tax incentives from Texas and from California and Nevada and the state of New York. He complains about federal spending, yet he has a space program that gets money from NASA. Do understand, oil and gas industry, all of these folks are going to Capitol Hill to get tax breaks, tax incentives. When it comes to us who might be poor or low class, they call it welfare. When it comes to them, they call it tax subsidies. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is that you got to connect your vote with the money. Okay, let me paint this picture. How many of y'all have ever been to the White House or been to D.C. and just stood in front of, maybe you didn't go in, but you at least walked by the White House? Okay. What is the federal agency right next to the White House? It's right next to it. Treasury. If you want to understand America, White House is power, Treasury is money. Power, money, money, power. If you ain't having a money conversation, you're not having an American conversation. See, so they don't mind when we go to Capitol Hill fighting for the George Floyd Policing Act. They don't mind that. They don't mind us spending time focusing on voter suppression. Those two things matter. But let us then begin to talk about the money, and then all of a sudden, you're going to see folk change. Coretta Scott King said, they killed my Martin when he started talking about the money. And I think one of the things that we have to begin to do is to connect our votes with the money. And begin to ask the very questions. Not only do we want to see resources coming back to our communities, we also want to make sure that when it comes to those contracts, that they're not simply going to mostly white men and white women, the greatest beneficiary of affirmative action in American history. I hear all these folks talk about tangibles, and we need this, we need that. Here's the deal. A politician can make a promise running, but you got to make them do it when they're there. And if you never show up and you never are pressing them, then they're not going to do it. Which means that all of this energy that we put into mobilizing and organizing folk to vote cannot stop the day after the election. You have to keep the same groups together and now mobilize and organize folk to put pressure on the same systems after the election is over, even if your preferred candidate lost, because you are still a constituent. And so many of us are literally allowing our power to just be lost because we are unwilling to maximize voting power. We broke records in 2008, electing Obama the first black president. And in every election since then, black voter participation has been dropping. And we're wondering why some things don't change. Do understand that you have to connect the two. I cover City Hall, I cover county government. I'm going to tell you right now, I know what happens when 25 folk show up in the council chamber. And then it's 50 next month. Then it's 100 the next month. Any politician will tell you, I don't know who these people are, but I am not trying to see 500 because they are counting votes. I've been saying this all across the country for the last 10 plus years. We've got all of this black infrastructure. We've got Divine Nine. If you remember, stand up. That's Divine Nine. If you Prince Hall Mason, stand up. If you Eastern Star, stand up. If you're in the Links, stand up. If you're in Jack and Jill, stand up. If you're in a church organization, men's group, women's groups, whatever, stand up. If you are a member of any organization, stand up. That's nearly every person in here. Now you need to be asking yourself the question, as a member of a group, are we spending more time on our internal business that don't really mean business? How much time are we spending externally outside of our organization? I need you to be asking your members when you go back, where are we on public policy issues? Where are we on, y'all can take a seat, where are we as an organization on economic development? Where are we as an organization on building black wealth? What are we doing outside of our meetings? Why do we have all of this sophisticated black infrastructure that's going untapped? If you take Divine Nine, Prince Hall Mason, Eastern Star, and the Links, each one of those groups could pick a month to show up at the city council meeting. That's 12 organizations. All you got to do is just pick one. Now let me explain to you what's going to happen when 100 or 200 folk in black and old gold, and pink and green, and red and white, and blue and white, and blue and gold, and all other organizations. Let me tell you what's going to happen when folks show up. The first thing one of them leaders going to say, at least she'll tell you, they're going to lean over. Who them people? And why are they all here? So imagine if those 12 groups alone said, there's some things we want from the city of Cincinnati. There's some things that we want from Hamilton County. And we're going to use our collective pressure to get these things done. That's called having an agenda. When the Republicans were blocking Loretta Lynch for being the Attorney General, the sisters were going to Capitol Hill, the Deltas were going, she's a Delta, the Black Women's Roundtable, they were all going. And I kept saying, yo, where dudes, where y'all at? So Jeff Johnson, my alpha brother, Jamal Bryant, Capra, I heard he spoke last year. I sent him a text. I said they wanted to upgrade the speaker in 2024. So y'all know I did. I put it on Instagram too. So we made the call. We didn't ask permission. 200 brothers showed up. Most of these brothers had never been to Capitol. Most of them lived in Virginia, Maryland, D.C. They had never been to Capitol Hill in their life. So we called a couple of members, make it easier to get in. Let me tell y'all something. Do y'all know how many cops were out there? I think there were more cops waiting on us they had on January 6th. And they were all trying, and it was so funny because when we went in, all the white reporters were trying to figure out what's going on. They were all trying to figure out, like, why did 200 black men just show up like on a Wednesday? So we knew who was standing in the way, and so I'm from Texas, and so we went to Senator John Cornyn's office, and I was like, all right, who's from this state? Come to the front of the line, because we know when you go Capitol Hill, they respond to constituents. So we went to go see the senator who was from Mississippi, and so we go in, and y'all, it's a whole bunch. Now, mind you, we broke up too, so this probably only been about 50 of us. They didn't see all 200, but we jam-packed in the office. I don't think y'all understand. That office was real black. So they didn't know what hit them. All these black dudes just walked in. So we said, yeah, we want a meeting with the senator. Well, the senator has a busy schedule. We'll wait. So what was the trip is, so there were these 3 women who were sitting over here. They were organization. And so the sister had to be the leader of them. So she overheard the conversation. She said, well, we have 20 minutes with the senator. We'll give them 10 of ours. So then the white girl at the desk is like, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. So we stood there and we waited. So what was funny is, then one of the folks came in and said, hey, it's really like packed in here. So is there any way y'all could move to the hallway? And then one of the brothers like, oh, that's good. I was like, stop. He don't speak for the group. No, we ain't leaving. See, I wanted them to feel we wasn't saying nothing, but they felt, dang, it's 50 Negroes packed in this office. So finally they were like, they ain't leaving. So they're like, hey, we can get y'all 10 minutes with the senator. Okay, go to the conference room next door. So we go in. So these brothers sitting down. And actually, I think I live streamed it too. So I'm sitting there, and so this particular senator, I forgot that he passed away. He was old, frail. Y'all call Biden old? No, he was old. But here's what I told him. See, this is also what happens again when you are paying attention. I had to remind him. I said, well, first of all, we noticed that you have not taken the position on whether you're going to vote for Loretta Lynch. And he said, well, I made my decision, but I ain't making it public yet. I said, well, I certainly hope that when you do make your vote public, you're going to vote the right way. I said, because let me remind you, the only reason you're standing here is black people crossed over and voted in your primary against your Tea Party opponent. So you are only the U.S. Senator because black folk put you back into this position. Now, here's what was crazy. When we walked out, he understood exactly what I was saying, and he eventually voted for it. When we walked out, his brother said, man, I ain't never seen nobody talk to an old white man like that. No, I want y'all to understand what I'm saying. These brothers, they just regular ordinary brothers. They had never seen or had a conversation with a U.S. senator. But we were trying to show them this is how you use your leverage and influence to impact power. After that, they were like, yo, who we meeting with next? So here's the point. So for 3 of us making the call, 200 show up, cause them to now realize how this thing works. Now imagine if that same thing gets replicated in cities and states across the country, then you are now going to see a changing dynamic. which says that you have an election coming up. You've got local and state elections. You got national elections. And you got folks who are saying Ohio is off the map. It's not a battleground state. It's over. It's only that way because we have untapped black power. We've got black folks in Cincinnati, in Akron, in Columbus, in Cleveland, in Dayton, and other places who are sitting on the couch, staying at home. So the real issue is, how do we begin to use our power and drive folk to the ballot box, but then say when the election is over, we got more work to do? I am convinced that if this generation had half of the intestinal fortitude of our ancestors, we could truly change every city, every county, every state in this country if we had the same attitude that they have. You can't tell me that we are standing here and black folks rub pennies and nickels and created schools to allow kids to be educated, and that don't make a difference. You can't tell me when you got black families who had 12 and 14 and 16 kids, and mom and daddy had no more but a second or third grade, but all of those kids got college degrees. You can't talk about, oh man, we used to have Black Wall Street. You can have Black Wall Street today if you decide to have a Black Wall Street today. The only way this thing is going to change is when this generation of black America decides to say, we are not going to accept status quo. We're going to be different. We're not going to accept anybody stopping us. We're not going to accept any excuses. And there's a brother or a sister who's in our way, tell them, get out the way, because we coming through, because we got some work to do. You need to understand that we can battle, we can scream, we can fight, we can do the work. And if anybody looks at you and say, well, man, listen, this is going to be too tough. This is going to be too hard. I don't know what we're going to do. All you got to do is say exactly what my frat brother, Vertner Woodson Tandy, said, one of our 7 Jews. He said, understand, we will fight until hell freezes over, and then we will fight on the ice.
Come on, y'all. Let's give him another round of applause. Amen. Vote together, vote power. All right, together. Amen. Those were some prolific words spoken, some encouragement that you gave us, that we can't just complain, but that means that we have some work to do. And we can do more together than we can separately. Doesn't matter if you vote by yourself, but it matters if we all vote. Then we can make a difference. So thank you, my brother. Thank you, my friend, for your encouragement on tonight. You have certainly kicked off this BFR weekend, and we are looking forward to more great things to come. Going to ask Iris Roley to come again real quickly. She has something she has to present.
Thank you to my dear friend Tracy Artist, to the Artist family. Thank you for being our friends. Mr. Martin, I am a partner of the only and the largest black-owned laser engraving business in the region. So I walk my walk and I talk my talk. So tonight, from the black-owned laser engraving business of 23 years, from the black family, sir, can you please join me? Y'all look, I done tore my top messing around with y'all. I'm so happy to be black. But that's okay, it was made by a black woman. So, Mr. Roland Martin, dedicated and determined. The Midwest Regional Black Family Reunion 2024 Speaker Series. We present to you from my business, Roadshow Awards and Graphics, and we dedicate these awards every year to my dear friend, Tracy Artist, and the Midwest Regional Black Family Reunion Committee. Mr. Martin, severely and seriously, consciously, dedicatedly, and determined. We want to thank you for continuing to be the burning flame of information, motivation, and consciousness in our Black community. Again, sir, I'm going to give you my business card. Not only do I fight for Black life and equity, I sleep with the owner. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. What a wonderful time we had with Roland Martin for BFR Speaks. Very, very excited. I want to share with everybody that Roland Martin is going to be in the lobby. He has merchandise, and he would love to meet and greet each of you. Thank you again for being here tonight. Did you all enjoy the night? Let's give it up for all of our sponsors: First Financial, Tri-Health, Grow Community. Don't forget to pick up your first ever copy of BFR 365, the Black Family Union magazine. I hope to see you all over the course of the weekend. Stay dedicated and determined.
I want to welcome you back to life, back to the one that can make your next chapter your best chapter. Hallelujah.
How can it be